Good day! Kamusta kayo? What's up, everyone? And first of all, I'd like to apologize for ghosting you all. I know I've been absent for quite a while since my last episode, my second and last episode. But hey, now we're back. We're trying out a new format in case you didn't notice. And sorry for the messy background. I'm in my bedroom. It's a rainy weekend. So I do hope that you're hearing me well. So again, welcome back to Ranthropology. I am Neil, your anthropologist next door, and I'm here to rant about, talk about, and basically uh, tell you my blah, blah, blah. My reflection. So yeah, this is being recorded as live. So sorry if I do mess up. I'm learning this whole new broadcasting thing. So yeah. So again, this where we'll be talking about everything and anything that pissed me off, basically, or got my attention, whether it be from social media, from the news, from any other development that could be analyzed in a cultural lens. So this new format will allow me to talk about our problems basically more than the previous format. So if you're a bit new to all of this, welcome to the show. If you've been following me from before, welcome back, and let's get it started. So I made this episode because a while back, I think a week or two ago, I saw something on Facebook that honestly uh, uh, ground my gears or made my gears grind, so to speak. It was a post that went viral, at least with my circles, and it touched on a lot of things that has been bothering me with our study of culture and basically how we see Filipino identity in general. So if you're my friend on Facebook, you probably saw one of my comments or one of my posts reacting to this. So this is basically expounding on the things that I have touched upon there. So without further ado, let's get the show started. Um, let's go. So yeah, um, if you're familiar with the post, it's basically posted by someone named Carlo Antonio Galay David, or I don't know. If it, if this ever gets to him, please do correct me if I pronounce your name wrong. Um, I like to start off with this. I do not have a any personal beef with this person. I do not know him. Excuse me. Honestly, I have never heard of him up until I saw his post. So I did a bit of background checking with him. I hope I don't sound like a stalker, but I needed to know where this person was coming from with what he said, what he posted. So let's just recap a bit on the post. No, if you saw this, it was basically a viral post about Starbucks. It was a sort of a review and a put down of people who like going to Starbucks, and in his own terms, people who my day or insta this shit because they see the brand. uh, he has a problem with these people. So if you're the type of person that posts your trips to Starbucks when you go there, If you like posting pictures of your coffee, whatever you're eating, the misspelled name in your cup, he probably has a problem with you. And also, might I add, he also sort of wrote this as a takedown of people seeing Starbucks as a social status or a sign, basically a marker of social status and class standing. He also did a very strongly worded criticism of the what to call it, the decor of Starbucks, along with its layout, along with its ethos, along with the idea that why do people feel social if they're eating at Starbucks, where in fact Starbucks was developed and marketed mainly for not the social crowd. It isn't fine dining. He was saying that Starbucks isn't fine dining. So why are Filipinos feeling like they are social when they go to Starbucks? So yeah, so that will be my topic of discussion today. We will be ranting about everything he touched upon this. Just I might also add that my personal take or my personal motivation for this is he talked about a very famous and a sociologist named Pierre Bordieu. He is very influential, not just in sociology and anthropology, but in the whole of social sciences in general. So I took this as an opportunity to basically explain to people um, who Pierre Bordeaux is and what he was saying. So there. So let's get this rant started. Uh, Sorry if I coughed on live air. I'm getting used to this recorded as live format. So what you're getting is unfiltered from my end. So if I ever do end up cursing, and if you're listening with kids, takpan nyo na lang ang tenga. If I ever do say something that gets me in trouble, sorry na lang. Sorry na lang sa akin. So yeah, so cheers. Let's get this started. And before before I start, I'd just like to clarify that this program, this post, this segment, so to speak, um, is in no way uh, what to call this sponsored by Starbucks. So I'm not being paid by Starbucks to do this. So if but I'm not opposed to. So Starbucks, if you want to send me something for for making a topic with my program, then by all means, please do. I've spent a lot of my money on your coffee, so it'd be refreshing to get something back. So yeah, so yeah, so let's start. Okay, so um, before I start with the um, line by line analysis of what he posted, just a brief background on the poster, so that we get a sense of where he is coming from. So apparently the poster, he self or he labels himself as the shaman of Kidapawan. So interesting. He, from what I've seen in his post, is a connoisseur of art. He likes art. He's a writer based on his profile, and he is usually present in, at least in what he was sharing. He is usually present in different art events. He's also a big appreciator of Chinese culture. So for some for some reason. Um, Again, I do not have a personal beef with this dude. I do not know him. I never met him. I've never engaged with him ever. But I do know that we do not have the same politics. um, ayoko lang magsimula muna ng away with my new rebranded show, but he does have very interesting politics. So yeah, so that is the background of the person making who made the post. So before I might start my analysis, let me start by giving you a bit of a history lesson with Starbucks, just so we know why Starbucks became the brand that it is known for today. Why it's spread all over the world, and why someone from Kidapawan is angry and is looking down at people, at Filipinos specifically, who are dining at Starbucks and using it to feel and look social. So yeah, so Starbucks was founded in Seattle, specifically in this place here. It's Pike Market in Seattle. It's a seaside, portside market, usually a farmers market that caters mostly to seafood. So no different than our farmers markets here, Nepa Q Mart, um, Farmers Cubao, those markets, large scale market. Of course, this this is America, so it's a bit higher end than those. But so yeah, so it started there as a small coffee stall run by these guys. So the founders and first owners of Starbucks were Jerry Baldwin, Gordon Bowker, I don't know how to pronounce that, and Zev Siegel. So yeah, so these three dudes were Seattle natives. They were I'm not sure if they were undergraduate college students or they were graduate college students when they started this, but basically they were students and they were in the academe, and it all started when these three had a vision to serve higher class coffee with better quality, made from a much more traditional and involved and intricate process from higher end beans. I don't know how you call those kinds of premium beans, perhaps. Um, and they wanted a coffee stand wherein it would cater to people like them. So when I say people like them, academicians who love getting coffee and basically having discussions, having academic discussions, just basically talking over coffee. So you know the type. A lot of academicians or well, basically when we say academicians, professors, people involved in the academe, one thing that describes them would be that they love talking. And one of the best companions, one of basically a good companion to a good conversation amongst, especially amongst academicians, would be coffee. So basically, they wanted a product and service, coffee shop that caters to people like them. So who would be uh, who would be hanging out, basically getting coffee and just spending the morning or the afternoon talking and discussing probably things that no one else care about. Much like yours truly and the people he has met throughout his forays in the academe. So yeah, so there. So yeah, so that's who the founders are. Okay. Before I move on, a bit of another context, another point of or a bit more on Starbucks history. From Seattle. So they were founded in the 1970s. Started their growth in the 80s, but really boomed in the 90s. They were able to IPO or became publicly listed, meaning that they've made it as a corporation um, only in the early 2000s, if I'm not mistaken. But back in the 90s, they were the direct. So basically, they boomed in the 90s, and one of the factors that led to its boom, its growth, is the fact that Seattle during that time was one of the centers of the um, quote unquote cyber revolution. So if we have the industrial revolution, a few people, it's not a very common term, but I've heard people using the term the cyber revolution. So basically, this was the time in the 80s and 90s where computer related businesses and companies were starting to boom, and a lot of them were based in Seattle. So the working and economic environment was changing there, and the lifestyles of people were also changing. So so if you're familiar with this old 90s movie classic called Sleepless in Seattle with Tom Hanks and Meg Ryan. So yeah, I think it was Meg Ryan. Well, a lot of movies in the 90s featured Meg Ryan, so it probably is Meg Ryan. So if you're familiar with that, it's all about the start of uh, online relationships. I mean, it's in infancy. Imagine I don't remember the whole film. I only remember glimpses of it. I watched it years ago, but it was a love story centered upon basically emails. So there. So Sleepless in Seattle. I mean, um, the title itself is connotates the lifestyles of the characters. Wherein Seattle was a bustling 24/7 city driven by technological change and the workers that are involved in it, or the personalities that are involved in it, the workforce. So with that setting, I bet you could already see that how coffee would fare, or how a business that basically serves coffee would fare and perform in such a condition. So since people were working later, sleeping later, waking up earlier, coffee became a necessity. So it became a prime commodity. So if you were serving coffee, you would um, basically have great sales. And one of the more known brands in the area was Starbucks, which initially was geared towards people visiting and working in the farmers market, in the Pike Market of Seattle. They still pay homage to that route. To their roots, a lot of the early customers of Starbucks were reportedly fishermen and fish vendors, and that is the reason why the Starbucks logo looks as such. So I was advised to not show the Starbucks logo. I might be sued. So I'm very sure you all know what the Starbucks logo is. It looks like a mermaid, or some sort of sea creature with a woman's head there. So it's very it looks very much like a something that is associated with the sea, and its original patrons were involved in the fish industry, so it does make sense that they would have that identity. Okay, so uh, from there, Starbucks started to travel the world and become a known brand. So eventually, it reached the Philippines, and the Filipinos took a liking to Starbucks. And that is where our conflict comes in. That is where our esteemed poster started his criticism. So he was saying that while Starbucks has a very working class image in the USA, Filipinos look stupid, in his own words, because we are associating being social, being high class, being cultured with being able to dine in Starbucks. So I'll address the common issues with this and probably start off with the idea of what he was doing. So there's this concept, not only in cultural studies, but in a lot of things called gatekeeping. So gatekeeping, from the term itself, is basically guarding the entrance towards something. So if you're, do all know security guards, bouncers. They uh, provide security and are the people assigned to screen basically who could pass through a gate to enter a bar, a mall, a bank, whatever. And such a concept also exists in cultures. So this is very common in what we call fandoms. So there are groups that are centered upon interests such as superheroes, comics, music, celebrities, literature, wherein some people act and serve as gatekeepers. They keep people out. They decide who gets in. And this has created a lot of issues within these groups itself. So there's a tinge of discrimination, elitism, and social hierarchy with regards to even something as simple as, for example, liking a band, um, or liking Marvel movies, Marvel comics, Marvel literature, Marvel whatever, everything Marvel. You often see this in things such as like I said, superhero fandoms wherein you hear people saying you aren't real fans. How could you be a real fan wherein you've only watched the movies? Or you are a bandwagoner. You are only identifying as a fan because it's the in thing. So you have discussions like that. So in cultural studies, we also encounter gatekeeping, and when we use the term gatekeeping, it is that there are people that funnel and monopolize the discussion of a certain culture. So, for example, if I would like to do a study with this certain indigenous peoples group, someone will tell me, I am the authorized spokesperson for this indigenous group, this tribe, this group of people. Um, I decide our narrative. I decide the information that we share. I decide who gets to get that information, and I decide what you see, basically what you have access to. And don't take it wrongly. We do value cultural experts. So in anthropology, when we do studies, we identify key informants, key cultural bearers, basically people that we know uh, have a certain role in a specific culture that provides them access to the information that we require. The best person to ask for the information that we would like to obtain. But this is very different from gatekeeping because gatekeeping involves a certain monopoly. So, for example, the difference between key cultural informants, key culture bearers, and gatekeepers is that culture bearers will give you a very detailed explanation of, for example, a ritual, because they are the shaman, probably conducting the ritual, but they will not monopolize and tell you that I'm the only person that you should ask about this, because we do know that different things, or one thing could have different explanations and meanings, depending on who would be um, explaining it to us. So a shaman conducting a ritual would have a very different description, reflection, and discussion of the said ritual than someone who is participating in the ritual. They have different experiences and roles. So let's put it in a setting and a context that we're familiar with. If I interview the debutante in a who celebrated her 18th birthday, she would have a very different recollection of her party as opposed to the debutante's parents, as opposed to those who participated in the 18 roses, as opposed to the friends who are there. So if you're catching my drift, so they would have different stories to tell about one single event attended by all of them. So so gatekeeping does not allow for or discourages that point of view. It is basically monopolizing the narrative for something that could mean different things to different people that experience it. In anthropology, it's always important in our field to recognize that we come from different perspectives. We have the emic and the ethic perspective, so the insider and the outsider's view, and all of this um, provide us clues and narratives with regards to our better and fuller understanding of cultural phenomena. So there. So now, relating that to what was done in that Facebook post, there is a big or basically there's gatekeeping involved, because if we go back to the post, he had a statement there that I'm summarizing, but he was basically saying that if you go to Starbucks and just to feel social, then you have colonial mentality, you are a social climber, etc., etc. But if you go to Starbucks for the sake of enjoying Starbucks, then you are okay, which is very absurd to me, because you cannot just go to Starbucks without or in a vacuum. The reason he was saying that we should enjoy or people should enjoy Starbucks for Starbucks' sake. But the very reason why people enjoy Starbucks is because they do not go to Starbucks for Starbucks sake. Sorry. Um, they go to Starbucks because they attach certain values, certain motivations, and certain experiences and memories with going to Starbucks. It does mean something to people that go there. It might not mean the same things. A doctor rushing to work who drives through for his coffee would not see Starbucks similarly to a group of teenagers who hang out at Starbucks and play Mobile Legends, or to lovers having their dates in Starbucks. They would all have different motivations and explanations and meanings behind their visits and trips to Starbucks, along with the different rituals that they have. So I'll go to ritual later once we get to that discussion, why I use the term ritual. But basically, what he wants people to do is very much impossible, just because no one goes to or does something anything, not even just going to Starbucks. Everything that we do um, has a motivation behind it, and everything things done over and over again with a specific procedure and with a specific purpose are called rituals. Okay, that is how we define it in anthropology. So the ritual of going to Starbucks means something for the people performing these rituals. No different than why people go to mass, why people celebrate birthdays, why people celebrate or forget or avoid celebrating anniversaries, those things. Rituals have motivations and create meaning for those participating and performing it. So yeah. So there was a discussion. So we'll get to um, the discussion he had below, um, basically ending his statement about or ending his post. He quoted a certain personality named Pierre Bordieu. So, like I said earlier, Pierre Bordieu is a very influential social scientist. He is a sociologist, but his work is studied and used by different social sciences and even um, economists, those people in that field, because he is one of the primary documenters, investigators, ethnographers of modern metropolitan culture, specifically that of Paris and France in general, the French people. So there was a discussion on what he said. He One of his prime works was quoted. In French, it's la distinction. It's basically the distinction, and um, basically it's a sociological report on French cultural status and the French taste. So basically, French what how, and why French people, specifically people in Paris, um, develop preferences. So, what preferences they have developed, how they developed it, and why. Why did they develop such preferences? And the poster mentioned something which was discussed in this sociological report. So he mentioned things about social and symbolic capital. So basically, he was saying that people should read this so that we should be made aware of the concept of social and symbolic capital, which is a very just a long-winded way of telling people that people who go to Starbucks to take pictures, basically broadcast that they are in Starbucks, or those that go there to feel social and look social, are basically just social climbers in its very essence, because social and symbolic capital means the things your investment towards reaching a certain status. So, in society, we have different forms of currency. So we have the very obvious one, the money or economic capital. So it's self-explanatory. Your status, your financial status is determined by the amount of money you make or are able to make. And it affords you certain privileges, certain kinds of access, certain levels of access in different things, or able to buy specific things, afford specific lifestyles because you have economic capital. Then there's political capital, wherein very explanatory how much power you wield, you have. Sometimes it's legislated, as with the case of elected officials. Sometimes it's much more informal, just because there are kingmakers, people behind politicians, people who are well connected, people who are owed favors. So it's a whole complex political market, political hegemony, and that affords you certain privileges, certain leeways, or the lack of restricts you in terms of living your daily life. So with social and symbolic capital, this deals more with your standing in society. What segment would you be able to identify it, and what segment basically allows you to be part of be part of them. So which segment accepts you as its member? So that is the concept of social and symbolic capital, and basically it was used to tell people tell Filipinos who enjoy taking pictures in Starbucks that you are someone doing this just because you want to invest in your social and symbolic capital, or to show people that you have a certain social and symbolic capital. And in a sense, this is true. Starbucks is a status symbol, di ba? Being able to afford expensive 150 to 200 peso coffee is a privilege. Not everyone has that, especially with in a country like ours, wherein the minimum wage is almost as same as a cup of Starbucks, sometimes lower. I mean, I know of a lot of places that do not follow the minimum wage, but yeah, so basically there is some truth to that. But one thing he fails, or the poster failed to discuss, expound, and take into account, is there is also a discussion in that book and in social sciences in general with regards to symbolic capital not just being the final goal, which is he was which was he was implying, he was saying that people like want to look like a certain member of or of that they're of a certain stature in society. That is why they support Starbucks. They display themselves in Starbucks. So that is the only thing he discussed. He failed to discuss that social and symbolic capital in itself is also a currency. So basically, social status isn't just the end goal, it is also a currency, meaning you are afforded certain things only because you are of a certain status. So in itself, it is not the end form. It is actually a means. Once you have reached a certain social status, you are now able to use that certain status as currency to be able to access things previously unavailable to you. So if this is becoming too abstract, no. So sometimes money really doesn't solve everything. I mean, as much as that we love money, um, and we are able to buy things if we have more money, there are things that are only afforded to people just because of their sorry, connections, their status, the people they know, their last name even, if they're part of a certain family, a certain political party, a certain economic cooperative, if they live in a certain place, if they're of a certain profession. So it doesn't mean that if you can afford it, you can easily buy it. There are still other rules at play for you to access something that you can economically afford if you cannot socially afford them. That is where you hear things with people saying they are trying hard. These things, especially with the things that the writer was saying, right? So he was implying these things. He was implying that um, not even if you could afford to buy at Starbucks, but because you behave a certain way, that according to him is against the rules of dining at Starbucks as a middle class member of society, then you are actually not really deserving of being of dining at Starbucks. He was implying as if that when I go to Starbucks, the only meaning that I could associate with it is that I'm not eating something social. Okay, I should go to Starbucks with the mindset that I will not share to people my trip to Starbucks or what I ate, which is actually very, very, very absurd and very, very discriminatory, so to speak, since um, the funny thing is the work of Pierre Bordieu is saying that these things contribute to oppression, diba? To oppression in society. Let's discuss a bit of Marxist theory in social sciences. So in Marxism, society is made up of classes, and these classes have created structures that enforce the current social hierarchy. So the elite are on top, the middle class are right here, and there is the working class. And therefore, it is saying that it doesn't mean that if you work hard or you toil and earn and save money that you will basically advance classes. Some people do. There are cases, but Marxism is saying the structure in itself is designed to maintain the status quo. And that is related to what Bordeaux is saying, that social and symbolic capital is basically one of the structures that prevent people from ascending the social hierarchy. This prevents um, meaningful change in our social order, which is very ironic because the poster was promoting Filipino coffee. Um, he was saying, telling people that those who enjoy Starbucks for the idea of eating social and to tell people that their preference is imported coffee, he was saying that these people have colonial mentality and therefore reeks of discrimination against our own culture. And it's ironic that he himself is echoing this. He's becoming discriminatory while pointing out the discrimination exhibited by people who take pictures of Starbucks. And this was discussed in the distinction. The title itself is basically pointing that out. There is a distinction. This is a means for society to segregate people further through our tastes, through our definition of what is acceptable in terms of good coffee and behavior in a coffee shop. So we are boxing and basically caging people into specific categories just because of the way that they enjoy their coffee. So there. So so from that, I have touched upon this earlier. One of the things that the poster failed to take account for or take into account is are the concepts of meaning making and place making. So when we say meaning making, this is basically where individuals in a certain culture are able to exhibit their agency. So agency is a technical term we use, which basically says your ability to choose and decide. So agency, you're being independent in a sense. So he failed to account that meaning making is something that is inherently personal and is inherently informed by an individual's history, culture, biases, beliefs, everything that makes up his cultural identity. So he might see Starbucks as something as of a wala lang, something wherein you should go there as if you are eating at a karinderya. Kasi he was saying that Starbucks is for the working class, a very expensive karinderya if you ask me. So he was saying that that should be the dominant meaning. That should be the only meaning. But that people should associate with Starbucks. But this is impossible just because one of the purest sense or one of the best um, ways that anarchy is exhibited is in the realm of meaning making. So if you're familiar with the concept of anarchy, it doesn't mean chaos, it doesn't mean destruction, it means order from below. So it's a social, political, economic order that comes from the people being governed. So there won't there in a traditional form of social hierarchy. Let's use a the Philip actually the Philippines is a bad example for this for traditional hierarchies, and I'll get to that later. But in a traditional democracy, capitalist democracy, there is a the government, and the government makes laws um, and forms social institutions that inform the behavior and lives of the people in that culture, in that um, society. So with anarchy, you remove the top. So order comes from below. So order is a product of people's interaction, of the interaction of the people or the institutions or the segments who are part of that system. It became a very famous political movement back in. People are crediting. Well, I know it has existed before that, but people are crediting one of the its popularization with the 5th of November plot in London. If you're familiar with the whole V for Vendetta mythology, it pays homage to Guy Fawkes, one of the conspirators of that plot wherein they planned to bomb, I think, the parliament to depose the leader. So that is one famous anecdote in the anarchy movement. They became more prominent in the 1900s when anarchists um, assassinated Franz Ferdinand, the ruler of, I think, Austria. I'm not that good with my World War II uh, history. So the ruler of Austria was assassinated while touring the Balkan countries by anarchists, and it led to World War One, which eventually led to World War Two, which eventually led to all the problems that we have right now in terms of geopolitics. So so that's the anarchy movement. Now, earlier I told you that the Philippines isn't a good example for a traditional government, but we are a good example for an anarchist government, or a government that where anarchy takes place. There was this book. The writer always escapes me, but it's a landmark reading, especially if you are in the social sciences, if you are in political science, at least in UP, where I came from, called The Anarchy of Families. So that book discussed the different powerful families throughout Philippine history and argued that the Philippines has a weak state. So the Philippines has a weak state. The government of the Philippines isn't really the one in charge. So the order that we have now is a product of the different ruling families in Philippine society, which are involved in different segments, sectors, and industries. And our social status or our social order is determined by the order agreed upon and designed by these families. So we are adjusting to how the families interact with each other. So um, we do know that in the Philippines, the strongest unit is the family. So it's Philippine society revolves around the family. So it's no surprise that even our political structures, our social structures, trace back to family. So um, that is why now this rhetoric is very famous amongst people dahil election na that ito ay away lang ng mga Aquino at Marcos, mga ganun. Puppet ka lang ng mga kuwang ko, whatever. So those things are basically manifestations of the anarchy of families that we are experiencing just because the Philippine state is basically subservient to the Philippine family and the Philippine families, the famous families. So there. So I got sidetracked. But yeah. So with meaning making, it takes anarchy is the keyword because meanings come from below. Um, it doesn't matter if a certain artifact, a certain cultural product was developed with its original intended meaning. Once people start using and utilizing this product, meanings could change. It's no this is a very post-structuralist and postmodern way of looking at things, but it is always important to take into account that context is everything. Okay? So, when the context changes, the meaning of a specific artifact would change. And that applies to Starbucks. So, someone born with a very privileged upbringing, a very privileged middle class upbringing, uh, could view Starbucks as something that's not social. Every day, that's something for every day. But someone who was born of a lower social status, lower economic status, and was not or is now able to afford Starbucks, whether that someone basically has saved a lot of money to be able to avail Starbucks or has ascended his economic status, transcended his previous economic status, and now can afford a lifestyle that allows for regular visits to Starbucks. Um, there will be differences in meaning making. It could mean to a certain person that likes taking pictures and likes showing people that he's eating at Starbucks that this is a testament of someone being able to surpass and transcend and cross social economic barriers um, in today's society. So it could be people could attach meanings of success with something as simple as being able to buy coffee at Starbucks. And we do not have the right to take that away from them just because we do not share their um, experience, their worldview, and their history. They are probably of a certain culture that has been told, or a certain segment that has been told time and time again, that they do not belong to places such as this. So if they do see, or if they are able to obtain this, we cannot blame them if they associate this with success. I mean, someone was born in a middle class family will not be able to understand this just because a lot of the things that middle class people have enjoyed since growing up, since they were born, aren't something that, or they could not imagine being born without these things. Imagine as a middle class family, as a member from middle class segment, families, the expectation for a middle class son or daughter would be you'd be born, you'd go to a school, your parents would support you, would get a job and raise a family of your own. Someone from a different segment, let's say the urban poor, being born in itself isn't expected. Surviving past childhood isn't in itself expected isn't in itself a given. It is a constant struggle to keep on surviving on a daily basis. So middle class people cannot imagine that life. The same way that urban poor people cannot imagine a life wherein Starbucks is an everyday thing. Starbucks, you'll be able to afford Starbucks just because in a month or so you would have your bonus or your sueldo or everything or those things that affords you such a product or a service. So there. So and the second part of this equation is placemaking. So placemaking is similar to meaning making, but the difference is it's much more geographically and space bounded. So placemaking says that a place is only a place just because people make it a place. So if that was confusing, let's say outside my house there's an open lot. To me, it's just an open lot. I do not think about it. When I wake up in the morning, I never think about that open lot. To my neighbor who parks there, it exists. It is his parking space. So when he wakes up, he's probably thinking, is my car still there? Has anyone parked in my parking space? So for him, it exists. Kids playing in that on that vacant lot could associate different memories than of those associated with or by my neighbor. So kids could be waking up excited to go to that place because that means that they'll be able to meet their friends. That means that they will be able to play, to see people that they have missed. So there. So that could extend to Starbucks. For you, Starbucks could probably be something of an everyday thing, enjoying it for the sake of for the sake for the sake of enjoying it. But to other people, it could mean a lot of things. People could take pictures of themselves as Starbucks just because it reminds them of their weekly barkada catch-up sessions with people who they do not see anymore. It could mean to lovers as their date place where they celebrated their anniversaries or God forbid where they broke up. So it could mean to someone who was born from an urban poor family, was able to graduate and get a high paying job and basically earn enough money to afford to buy at Starbucks as a place wherein it represents all the goals he has in life. It's overly dramatic, but I hope you get what you're saying. That we do not have, no one has a monopoly of the meanings associated with Starbucks. I mean, take it from middle class segments na lang, di ba? We're, dif- different people who are in middle class hang out at Starbucks, but they all associate different meanings with Starbucks. A law student and a med student reviewing Starbucks could view Starbucks as a place of sanctuary, of solitude, of silence, wherein they can focus and study. A rowdy barkada who had a few drinks and went to Starbucks to basically have coffee after getting drunk could see Starbucks as a fun party play after party place. Um, that busy doctor I was saying, telling you about earlier, could see Starbucks as something of a convenient way to get good coffee. So it could mean a lot of things. It does mean a lot of things, and no one has a monopoly of these meanings. And um, especially coming from someone who is very much involved in the arts. I see that he does art criticism. He is an art critic and a writer, and we do know that art is dependent on he who views the art. So no one can, not even the artist could tell you what his art, what his painting, what his song, what his sculpture represents. He could not impose. He could tell you why he wrote it, why he drew it, but someone else could interpret it differently. I mean, art critics would agree. So there. So the last point he touched upon was the idea of people should instead support local instead of Starbucks. Now, my personal take on this is I do not oppose his drive, his advocacy to promote local brews, local coffee, because we do have great local coffee. And if I may, currently I'm now enjoying one. A short plug. This is by Mulat Diwa. I hope you can see this. So this is from Mulat Diwa Coffee. This is their cold brew. It is this atok. No, this is Sagada. I already finished the atok. So this is one of my favorites. It's made by my good friend Reynold Batalla. So check them out on Facebook and Instagram. Mulat Diwa Coffee. Yeah, if I would agree with the poster that some local coffees, a lot of local coffees are better than Starbucks coffees, and one of them is Mulat Diwa Coffee. So check them out. So there. So yes, we do have a lot of good local coffee, but we also have to recognize the fact that Starbucks did a lot of good to the local coffee scene. And bear with me here. I'll give you my analogy. I share to you my personal experience. Growing up, I wasn't that versed in coffee. I only started drinking coffee when I was already a senior in college, that late. So it wasn't part of my diet. And the only coffee that I drank were 3-in-1 coffee. So the Nescafe coffee during that time, which had different flavors, hazelnut, original, choco, whatever. So those were the first kinds of coffee that I discovered, that I enjoyed, that not really enjoyed, but consumed. When I was already working, Starbucks was much more prominent. So I was able to be exposed to different kinds of coffee. This was where I started to discover that I enjoy my coffee black, that enjoy my coffee iced. Good. So yeah, and because I started discovering more about coffee through Starbucks, I started developing preferences and I started searching for which other avenues could I pursue to obtain the coffee that I like. So, and it led me to sampling different local coffees. And on an habitual point of view, on a discussion of habits, it was never really my thing growing up. It was never really a part of me. I've never really experienced hanging out at coffee shops up until I started hanging out at Starbucks. Started visiting Starbucks branches with my friends. It wasn't my scene. I'd rather hang out at bars, to be honest. But Starbucks opened to me the idea, or exposed me to this whole world wherein I could hang out and talk to my friends in a different context, in another as without the need to get drunk and without alcohol. So I could just go and have coffee with my friends, and it broadened my horizons in terms of exploring what other coffee shops are there, which also led me to supporting and discovering different local coffee shops. Because um if I remember correctly, before the advent of Starbucks and big and large names with a lot of branches, large names in the coffee industry with a lot of branches, local coffee shops weren't that prominent. It wasn't part of the Filipino pop culture. It wasn't part of the Filipino hangout places. We'd hang out at malls, we'd hang out at restaurants, we'd hang out at parks. But Starbucks hanging out in a coffee shop was only popularized when Starbucks and brands such as them came into town. And I think while they do compete with local coffee, they did allow a lot of people to discover the coffee scene in general. I can relate this to something, another personal experience of mine, and I think a lot of you could relate to this. Um, Marvel. Um, while I do read comics, my greater appreciation for Marvel came with the movies. I got invested in their characters because I watched their movies. So I researched on what other stories about Iron Man or Spider-Man do they have. So I started buying and reading comics. It could also extend to music appreciation. Growing up, my first exposure to music was cassette recordings of my older cousins of Backstreet Boys. And that is where I started to appreciate and learn about music. When I got into high school, it was all about the rock and emo scene during my time. So um, those were my influences when I started to learn to play my own instruments. And then as I developed a greater aptitude and appreciation for music, I started exploring other genres that led me to jazz, freeform jazz, to hip hop, to grime, to trip hop. Every weird genre, every artsy genre could imagine, I've listened to. And it's because I was exposed, my interest was developed because of Backstreet Boys. I'm not too proud to admit that. Diba? So because of my initial exposure to the commercial types of music, I was able to explore the much more complex and in-depth musical styles and tastes that there are. And this is no different. So that is how I see it. Do they compete with each other? Probably so. Of course, at the end of the day, Starbucks is still a multinational, and it's still unhealthy for a local brand to be put up or to be pitted against a multinational. It will never bode well for local brands. But we cannot discount the fact that Starbucks and similar brands were also instrumental in developing the whole coffee scene in in the Philippines. I mean, I'm not an expert coffee brewer. There are people who are experts in coffee brewing. Shout out to my friends there who are, you know who you are. But at least in with what I observed as a part of the more um, non-cool people in terms of tastes in coffee, I discovered greater or I was able to develop greater appreciation for coffee when I first started getting exposed to brands such as Starbucks, and it eventually led me to Mulat Diwa coffee, and now I cannot um, survive a morning without such kinds of coffee. And also going back to tastes, um, we cannot fault people for preferring one taste to another. It was mentioned by Bordeaux in the book that was quoted in the post that taste is a product of complex social history and social structures. Maybe people who like Starbucks but do not like local coffee. I don't know if there are, but if there are, let's use them as an example. Maybe they have a certain cultural history that allowed them or that led to them developing a preference for this. Me myself, I like a lot of different kinds of coffee, but mostly I like my coffee black. I do not like frappuccinos. I do not like cream on my coffee, and I prefer my coffee iced. Um, it's futile if I talk to someone and and I debate with them, but coffee is, or if they debate me that coffee is better hot. Well, for you it might be. I like my coffee ice because I like it on the go. I usually drink coffee while I'm driving on the road, while I'm walking. So I prefer to be able to. So I prefer not being burned with my coffee, and I prefer it to be refreshing. I'm one of the weird people who, when I do work out, I drink coffee immediately after. I know it's unhealthy, but it feels refreshing for me. Is that backed up by science? Probably no. Probably no. But I do acknowledge that because of certain experiences and certain needs that I have, that is my preference. And I cannot impose that on other people. I cannot tell other people coffee should only be enjoyed black and with ice. No, it is not. Um, it will never be an agreeable discussion because people drink coffee differently. People drink coffee in different settings. People drink coffee for different reasons. Some drink it to fall asleep. Some drink it to wake up. Some drink it because they just like drinking it. They substitute it for water. so so there. So we cannot force a people to select one over the other. I like Mulat Diwa coffee. It's more of in the local artisan premium coffee scene. I also like Starbucks. But cold brew lang naman gusto ko sa latte. But yeah, but I like Starbucks coffee because it's accessible and convenient. But driving to work, it would never fail that every morning I'd pass by a McDonald's and to buy their iced coffee. I do not like sugar in my coffee, but because they serve their iced coffee, their black iced coffee with sugar, you cannot separate it. I've tried it many times, tried to tell them many times to do it. They cannot. Um, but I like that. Is it the same as Mulat Diwa and Starbucks? Probably not. Is it cheaper? Yes, it is. Does it make it a much more inferior choice? Yes and no. Of course, cannot expect that to taste as authentic as premium branded locally brewed coffee served fresh to you. But I buy it out of convenience because there's a McDonald's on my way to work. It's cheap, it's quickly given to you, and I can drink it while driving. It gives me the boost that I need to face the day and not be tempted to tear people's heads off. So yeah, it does its job. So there. So to summarize my long rant with this, at the end of the day, no one has the right to monopolize the meanings that people associate with the rituals with their that they do. So going to Starbucks and enjoying its coffee is a ritual. It's a ritual done by different peoples from different segments in society. And those meanings change. So it might be true. For the middle class segment, a lot of people might say flaunting your coffee is a no-no. It might be true for the middle class segments. But for those not part of the middle class segment, different meanings could be associated with it, and different rituals come with this different meanings. And at the end of the day, as long as you're using your own money to pay for your coffee and not being disruptive to the next table, well, I don't see a reason why you can take a picture of your coffee and feel social when you're in Starbucks. I mean, it's expensive, so it is a bit it is a bit social if you ask me. So yeah. So there. So before I close this episode, I just like to plug. I posted in my Facebook. Recently, I was invited. Excuse me. Recently, I was invited by this brilliant professor from UP Baguio who teaches the STS class. So that's a science, that is science, technology, and society. One of my favorite classes back when I was in UP, when I was an undergrad. It's basically TED Talks before TED Talks existed. So they'd invite different scientists, um, cultural workers, musicians, whoever, just to show that science doesn't happen in the vacuum. So, where is the science in literature? Where's the science in environmentalism? So, those things. Excuse me. So, there. So, I was invited to talk to that, to one of the classes there. I had fun. It was very insightful. It was very refreshing to, for a change, talk to young people, the Gen Zs and Gen Z UP students, UP Baguio students, about one of my favorite topics of all time, beer. If you know me, I've been doing studies on beer since I was in undergrad, and it has been a lifelong obsession of mine to know everything about beer. So I'm a big beer drinker, and I also take pride in having gathered academic and scholarly knowledge on beer, which I shared to these students. So if you're interested to learn about that, it's a two-part lecture. I think an hour, the actual lecture, and then another hour for reflections, discussions with the students. I've shared it in my Facebook page. So check it out on the anthropologist next door. So yeah. So there you have it. I hope you did get something from my short but long, actually not short, my very long rant. So if you enjoyed this, I hope you keep tuned in to my next episode. I promise to produce more. And I just also like to plug that the song that you're hearing is part of my side project. I've started a musical project, a band called Sorry Neighbor. So check us out, Sorry Neighbors Music at Instagram, Sorry Neighbors in Facebook, and we have a couple of singles out. But this one will be part of the album that will be released probably in November. So again, I am the anthropologist next door, and this has been Ranthropology. See you next time, and enjoy your coffee.